Hey guys, welcome back to Everyday Off-Road. Today's subject is going to be this big piece of metal here next to me. You may be wondering what it is. We're going to get into that in this video and get it installed on the Jeep, so stay tuned. Guys, like I said before, welcome back to Everyday Off-Road. Got another episode today here in the garage. Doing some between ride additions and maintenance. And this is a Barnes 4-wheel drive oil pan skid plate. Now, I don't know if you've seen the video where we installed the cable linkage and the transfer case skid portion of the Barnes kit on the TJ. This is the oil pan edition, and it runs from the transfer case skid all the way up to the front of the Jeep to protect the oil pan when you're off-roading, especially big rocks and everything like the previous Hawk Pride video. It's made by Barnes 4-wheel drive in North Carolina. Super heavy duty. It's the same thickness steel that our transfer case skid was. Bolts right on. It's got these 4 pre-countersunk holes in here so the bolts don't hang down below it and snag on something on the trail. Also comes with this really neat integrated oil pan flap here, so you can just undo one bolt and have access to your oil pan drain plug, so you can easily change oil with the skid on. First things first, we're going to get this thing cleaned up, maybe hit it with a light sand, and then we're going to get it primered, and we're just going to paint it a satin black to match our transfer case skid, and then we'll get into the meat of the install. The first thing you're going to want to do on any bare metal parts like this that you're planning to paint is make sure it's nice and clean. We're just using some mineral spirits from Home Depot. Nothing fancy, just want to make sure it's got all that grime and dust and black shavings and all that stuff from production off the metal so the paint can stick nice and even. We've got this ready to go, so we're about to hit it with a coat of primer. Also, with the skid plate, the Barnes kit comes with the oil pan door and these 2 arms that actually attach the front of the skid to the motor mount locations. It's actually where the skid ties in the front. Like I said before, it ties to the transfer case skid in the back. So that's how it's attached. We've got to primer and paint these as well. Obviously, you don't want anything to be unpainted under there, so just put a coat of black primer on here, letting it sit for about 10 minutes, and then we'll hit it with some satin black paint as well. This is the primer I'm using. It's just a Rust-Oleum automotive primer. It's kind of the grayish black color, so it doesn't go on white or anything that takes a long time to cover up with black. This kind of just mixes in with the satin black paint. Really easy to use, fast drying. It says you can final coat it within 10 to 30 minutes after using it. So this is what we use on everything that we've painted on the Jeep so far underneath, and it seems to work well. Alright guys, got the skid completely painted. Came out really good. I think this is actually the best one of my homemade paint jobs has ever come out. It really does look like a nice powder coat. Got a pretty good finish to it. I think what helps is putting a coat of clear on at the end to kind of seal everything up and even out any rough spots. So that looks good. And then we've also got all of our brackets here. Like I mentioned, these 2 go from the new skid plate to the where the motor mounts are on the frame. That's how the front of the skid's held up. And then here's your little oil change access door. So everything's painted, about to get it thrown under the Jeep. So I'm not sure how good you're going to be able to tell exactly where we are, but we are under the Jeep looking forward. Here's the back of the oil pan and the exhaust. This is going to mount to the bottom of each motor mount bracket. There are 2 holes just from the factory with nothing in them. Each of our brackets is going to mount to one of these, and then here's your passenger side one right here. It's a little easier to access on this side, so that's where each of those 2 little arms is going to mount under the Jeep. Going to kind of come down and then attach to the oil pan skid down here somewhere. So we're going to get these bolted in, and then in the back here's your transmission, and we've got our Barnes bolt-on transfer skid that has been very tried and true. It's got beat up, dent in the back. Anyway, we're going to tie in the rear onto this, using 4 of the holes that are already here, and hopefully everything lines up, and it should, because it's all from barns. So shouldn't be any drilling required, which will be nice. So we're going to work on the front and then update you guys in a second. As far as instructions, it's pretty simple. There were none. At least it came in the box. There weren't any instructions, but if you go to Barnes' website, it pulls up a PDF. It's got kind of a step-by-step thing here. Step 1, basically installing each bracket. Step 2, installing the engine skid. And then step 3 is basically tightening all your hardware down. It shows it as pretty simple. But as far as labeling your bolts and all that, I can't find anything. So just got to use your best judgment. So here's real quick what I've kind of come up with as far as the mounting hardware. These 4 will hold the arms, the mounting arms for the front of the skid plate onto the motor mounts. These 4 attach the back of the skid plate to the existing transfer case skid plate. You can kind of tell because they will go up in those countersunk holes and be nice and flush. So that's those. These 2 will attach the bottom of the arm that is mounted to the motor mount to the front of the skid plate. These slide in behind the motor mounts and is actually what these screw into. And then this little guy is all you've got left, and it just holds the oil pan door on. So it's pretty simple to figure out what you got going on here. Now we've got both the mounting brackets on for the front of the skid. This is the driver's side. As you can see, it bolts on right what we were talking about earlier. Kind of comes down, drops down right below the oil pan here. And then your passenger side was pretty straightforward. Driver's side took me a minute just by myself to be able to get that insert behind there and get the nuts threaded through. But so there's your passenger side drop down bracket. Here's your driver's side drop down bracket. So the skid is going to come something like this, connect here, and then cover all this up and run towards the back. So we're about to go get the skid and get it mocked up. It's said to leave these loose, which we have. Assume you may have to work these a little bit to get them lined up with the skid plate. Should be fun by yourself, but we can handle it. Finally got all our bolts in. I'll go ahead and admit this isn't the most fun one-man job I've ever done. Passenger side, driver's side, get your 2 bolts that thread in on either corner. Main key is to leave these 2 brackets loose. I had them too tight and I thought I left them loose enough, but you got to have them really loose to get this thing lined up. Everything's in. Got our 4 bolts put in the back, tying it into the transfer case skid. Just got to torque them down at this point and then put our oil change door on. Should be about done. The 2 bolts up here holding the top of the bracket onto the frame side are a 9/16. Passenger side, you really should use a box wrench. Not quite enough room to get a socket in here. And on the driver's side, you can use a socket with a long extension. Probably the easiest thing. When you're done up front, you can take your 9/16 box wrench and a 7/32 Allen key. Come back here to the back, torque all these 4 bolts down that connect the new skid to the existing skid. Like I said, it's just a 9/16 on the back for the nut, and then a 7/32 Allen head bolt on the bottom. Next, you're going to want to torque down the 2 bolts on the front of the skid, attaching it to your mounting brackets. Just takes a 19 mil. The very last thing you're gonna want to do, install your little oil pan door for access to the drain plug, so you can change your oil without having to pull the skid all the way off. This just takes a 3/16 Allen bit. That's it. Alright guys, the Barnes is on. Really impressed with how it looks. It's very sleek. I mean, you can't even tell it's on from up front. Come around the side of the Jeep, just stays nice and high up there. Literally comes off the front of the bolt-on transfer case skid from them. Stays level, keeps your oil pan nice and protected. Really think it looks good. There's kind of a good view. Shows how destroyed my transfer case skid is, but here's a nice new one. Like I said, bolts on with these 4 countersunk bolts in the back. Runs up, has this nice lip on the side to protect everything. Runs all the way up front. Looks really good. Got the Barnes logo right there in the front. Here's you a good shot of your brackets. Getting these on was definitely the trickiest part. Still wasn't bad. Pretty good design. Keeps everything nice and safe. Alright guys, hope you enjoyed this install video. If you did, please remember to like the video, subscribe to the channel. Stick around because we got more TJ content coming your way. This has been Everyday Off-Road. See you in the next one.